Well, it seems like a lot of people have a lot to say about the prototype in Poppy Playtime, and a lot to say about the new Chapter 5 in general. The design and lore that we ended up getting was not what a lot of people had been expecting, but at the same time, it was what a lot of people had been hoping for. So I've rummaged around some videos, some of mine and some from elsewhere, and gathered a selection of comments from both extremes, those who love and hate the prototype. Let's take a look and see if we can find some middle ground. Before we begin, if you enjoyed today, please subscribe. I'm Kirbyster Plays, how are you doing? Let's take a look at the comments and start with a positive one. The prototypy official design looks goddamn awful. Well, tell me more, tell me more, Sliver, if you're still around, I'd love to hear more. Like, there are a lot of reasons why people don't like the prototype. A lot of people haven't bought into the full Jester aesthetic. A lot of people think it looks too complete or too clean. Some people think it looks too big. There are a lot of reasons why people don't like the prototype design, so I would love to hear more. And if you're watching and don't like the prototype design, comment and let me know why. I low-key love bro design. I don't think he's meant to look scary, but to look imposing, and damn, bro does look imposing. He aura farmed the whole chapter. Is this guy the first person in human history to say the prototype was aura farming throughout chapter 5? I mean, they're not wrong. They did have a certain presence when they entered the room. It was all about them. They did have a certain distinctive, defining aura. So, you know, you're not wrong. There is a certain signature prototype aura. I'm gonna be honest. I didn't think the design looked good. It wasn't what I expected, but I'm not going to attack anyone or complain like a hater. It's a really good way of thinking. If everyone thought like this guy, we'd be in a much better place. Mob Entertainment promised that 1006's design would be better than 95% of the fan-made ones, which in my opinion, it wasn't. In my experience, it was exactly the same as about 95% of the fan art. A lot of people got scarily close to accurately predicting what the prototype would look like. It's very impressive. From what we'd seen about the prototype before, especially in the catnap statue referring to the catnap shrine in chapter 3, and the scenes in chapter 2 and 3, his full arm appeared and it didn't have those colourful sleeve parts. To me it feels like they completely changed his design. I didn't expect those sleeve parts. I thought that the arms had been established, and a lot of other people did as well. I thought they were just long, slender mechanical arms with some bone marrow type material around it. Maybe they didn't want to make it more macabre or disturbing. I love the word macabre. If they ever do something like that, maybe it'll be later, like in chapter 6. If the player somehow destroys him and he shows up again with a really disturbing body, that would be incredible. And you know, you're not wrong. Chapter 6 is in the unique position to completely alter the prototype's design. If we end up damaging or perhaps burning the prototype even more than we already have done, and they become more vengeful and more dangerous, that will reflect in its physical appearance. You know, I can see the mask becoming more cracked or even disappearing entirely, and like the Jester clothes being torn or burnt off and revealing more mechanical parts beneath it, or more bone or organs. That would be horrifying. I like the prototype's design, except the Jester hat, and you know, I was almost the same. I thought that the whole Jester / Jack-in-the-Box aesthetic was covered with Boxy Boo in Project Playtime. Obviously the prototype is quite different, but I didn't expect them to have such a defining toy that they were associated with. You know, when people say that they expected the prototype to be an amalgamation, that doesn't mean that they had to have like multiple heads or like a Mummy Longlegs and Huggy to be like 50-50, but the prototype was, in essence, a first impression, a first experiment turning a human into a toy. Why would Playtime Co. then go after a Jester aesthetic for that? So I didn't expect to see a Jester hat, and I certainly didn't expect to see a complete Jester hat after everything that the prototype has been through. He's remained weirdly intact, so we don't know if the Jester aesthetic was planned from the start and the Jester hat was always going to be a part of the prototype's design. Maybe in the chronology of things, the prototype added a Jester hat so that he could feel more complete. I don't know. One artist gave the prototype a flamethrower because Kissy had burn marks after he attacked her at the end of chapter 3. You know, that's a good point. You know, I keep forgetting, at the end of chapter 3, Kissy came in direct contact with the prototype. She is burnt, she is scorched, isn't she, for at least the last 2 chapters. It's weird, I hadn't actually thought about how that had happened. You know, I have seen fan designs. I'd say probably at one point most fan designs had a flamethrower on the prototype or some kind of flame weapon. So it is quite interesting. I don't know, maybe Kissy was a victim of circumstance and they were around flammable materials. In just that short time they were fighting, Kissy was able to get burnt. I don't know, it's an interesting idea. What annoys me more than the great profile picture, by the way, what annoys me more than the prototype design is all the bootlicker trying to defend it. You'll see them all say, well, it's a toy factory, so it makes sense it's a toy. And though that's somewhat reasonable, it's completely dismantled when you remember it's a prototype. It shouldn't look like a toy. The whole point of its existence was for the scientists to see if reanimating a person was possible, so obviously they wouldn't waste time on making it look presentable for kids. So that's why it should have been more Abomination-like, which would have made it truly horrifying. This is a really good point, and Poppy was made around the same time. That toy was marketed and sold to kids directly. Poppy is an actual toy sold by Playtime Co. But I don't know why the mentality of making the prototype marketable existed since the start, and this links back to the argument of the prototype upgraded itself and added more Jester elements to itself. That is interesting. You know, I wonder why Playtime Co decided, okay, we're going to make it Jestery. It was their first impression of turning a human into a toy, and their first idea was to make it like a Jester / Jack-in-the-Box. It is strange. Again, we have no idea which modifications the prototype made to itself. So that could be the case. You know, what I would have loved is if Chapter 5 gave us the same level of clarity as Chapter 3 did over the Hour of Joy. If Chapter 5 at some point had a VHS that showed the prototype's first days. It could have even been like a slideshow. They didn't have to animate humans or scientists. But showing what the prototype looked like in those first few days would have been brilliant. Seeing like the exact moment the prototype went wrong. I know that we've heard the prototype be talked to, but design-wise, I would have liked to see like an earlier version of the prototype so that when we ended up seeing them, or even after we'd seen them, we had something to compare them to design-wise, you know? I think it would be interesting if it was revealed that the actual original design of the prototype was the bottom half, and the Jester part is actually from another toy we hadn't met or seen. Really make it so that as a prototype, he is entirely unrelatable to what came before. Make him literally be proof of concept, that the process of turning a human into a toy is possible. You don't need it to look friendly for that. You know, the fact that this comment came after the one before it is miraculous, quite frankly. This is spot on. And it also introduces a really good and very unique idea. I haven't seen anyone else bring that up. What if the prototype is the bottom half? And the Jester is something that is puppeteering to give it like a fuller design because it was incomplete. Wouldn't that be cool? If the prototype, like in its most complete form at the time, was just an endoskeleton, and the Jester mask, hat, etc. are just things that it found, resources that it had to tie itself to and build itself. It's a very good idea. You know, the prototype being a spider. I don't think that the design is the problem. It's more the how he got revealed. Why is the big bad guy getting revealed by a tea party? He should have encountered us in a dark room or hallway or something more scary. You know, the circumstances of when the prototype appeared wasn't everyone's cup of tea. Quite literally, the tea party wasn't everyone's cup of tea. I thought it was weirdly fitting. But also, the ramifications of it have been quite immense. The discourse around Lily Love Braids at the moment is all about how they are introduced only to be immediately overshadowed by the prototype. And that's true. I think Lily Love Braids was done a bit dirty in this chapter, but in terms of taking place in a tea party, and especially having Poppy and Kissy there to see it, I think that all works. We're this deep down in Playtime Co, it's pretty much all we're gonna get, you know? If you think about the other locations that are present in Chapter 5, if we didn't see the prototype in this giant, like, dollhouse looking place, where else would we have really been able to see them? Like, are we gonna see them running down hallways, or in these, like, cramped tunnels, or like around these conveyor belts and things? You know, I think they made the best of the chapter, and I think they introduced them at the right time, personally. I love the prototype's design, though I got a big Stitch Wraith vibe from it, or well, the face did. Wow, what a good point! Is this the first person in human history to compare the prototype to the Stitch Wraith? The Stitch Wraith from the Five Nights at Freddy's novel franchise, which later got a physical design in the FNAF Character Encyclopedia, which I pre-ordered. Fun fact. I mean, I know they're not one-to-one, but I see what this guy means. And I'm surprised, honestly, that the Stitch Wraith didn't come to me sooner. It's a very good comment. I love his design. It's nice, and they have a means of fixing any scaling plot holes of his arms, because he likes to change his body for me. I would go a little more flesh. After all, he takes parts from others to make himself strong. Maybe he'll have some different parts next we see him. Again, Chapter 6 has the amazing opportunity of making the prototype look more vengeful, damaged and evil, but it already looks pretty bloody evil. I do get what you mean about wanting more flesh, or wanting more human elements in it. Like, I know we have the traces of a bone marrow looking material in the arms, and like a weird ribcage looking thing. The fact that the prototype was a toy that came from a human doesn't really shine through in the final design, and that's not just me saying it. A lot of people think that way. I'll be honest with you, I didn't expect the prototype's hands to be as big as they were in Chapter 5, because think about it. When we see the prototype on a VHS, there's no way to infer the scale, right? There's no way to compare them to anything else because we're on a TV screen. But at the end of Chapter 2, when we saw the prototype drag Mummy Longlegs away, it's really strange that that's the same size as the hands that were able to stab Huggy through the chest. Why would Playtime Co. give their first experiment hands that could stab Huggy through the chest? Why would they give them sharp hands that could kill anyone? It's actually quite a good question, honestly. I definitely think the size of the hands relating to the prototype have been inconsistent. Not massively inconsistent, and also we don't know when the prototype modified themselves or how. I think in terms of how deadly the hands have been, I feel like the size of the hands, they're all really good points to consider. I think my only problem is it seems to be too finished to be a prototype. This is a good point by Myth Cafe, my good friend. What guy? Yeah, I totally get what he's saying. This is a comment that's been repeated a few times by a few different people. I think that's because of the fact that the prototype is clothed. I didn't expect them to be clothed at all. I thought that they would just be like a metal robot, but the fact that they have like a Jester top, some kind of sleeve, the hat is still intact, they do seem quite finished. Again, we don't know the extent of Playtime Co.'s design and development when it comes to the prototype, because there have been like a decade and a half at least for the prototype to modify and change itself to feel more complete. I think that's a good place to end it today, so that's our ensemble of comments. If you do or don't like the prototype, tell me why. I'd love to know.